Recently, I was thinking about weight management in the context of animals. Some animals have a very different relationship with fat compared to us. For example, seals and walruses have loads of fat. A huge portion of their body is fat, but they don't get heart attacks and die all the time because that amount of fat is healthy for them. Their overall body is meant and designed to have that amount. It's their norm. But put the same fat ratio on a human or a cat, and no sir, that's not good. And different animals process foods differently too. Hummingbirds literally eat sugar, and that's pretty much it. But if a person or a dog ate nothing but sugar, well, health problems galore. But this got me thinking about those little teeny weeny tiny bugs that love to eat all my crumbs. Can bugs get fat? Do insects get fat? I'm not kidding. These are the things that I ponder late at night. And thankfully, someone else has done all the hard work, but they failed to put it into a nice, easily digestible YouTube video. That's my job. So, to keep it quick and simple, a scientist back in the 1960s, who I was unable to find the name of, started to research mosquitoes. Just a general sort of mosquito study, you know, how do they do the thing that they do? He must have liked mosquitoes because he's a weirdo. However, in order to study the insects, they needed to live in captivity properly. I know, advanced stuff. So he fed them, of course. I've seen how they do it. It's a blood sausage. It's as gross as it sounds. But he accidentally wound up overfeeding all of his mosquitoes, so he decided to change his research to fit the situation. I mean, when life gives you lemons, you know? Bloody blood-filled lemons. However, researching obese mosquitoes is only the beginning of the look into the world of obese bugs. And from his surface-level scratching, we got a few tidbits of info, like, yes, it's possible that insects can be obese. Heck, obesity could very well exist in every organism. All of them. But the interesting thing is that fat insects don't actually look fat. Unimpressed with all this data, a Mr. Dr. Spencer Bamer, that I'm mispronouncing most likely, from Texas, picked up the mantle of bug fattener to further study the nature of obesity in insects, all under the guise of seeing how caterpillars could adapt to extreme changes in their nutritional environment. Or, in layman's terms, how do caterpillars deal with all the food that's around them constantly? And it turns out that, like with humans, weight management all comes down to carb intake. They were trying to find out what mechanisms these caterpillars employed to deal with a carb-rich or a carb-poor environment. The same thing humans have been trying to figure out since we realized carbs are the primary fattener. So over the course of a few bug generations, they fed one set of caterpillars artificial diets that were rich in protein and low in carbohydrates, similar to the Atkins diet. And the other caterpillars received diets low in protein and high in carbohydrates, similar to the standard American diet. When the caterpillars were raised in carbohydrate-rich environments for multiple generations, they developed the ability to eat excess carbohydrates without adding fat to their bodies. Living the dream, they are. I mean, could you imagine if all you had to do was be born in the correct generation and you could just literally eat whatever? Kids these days. There's actually some people that are able to do that, but that's a whole other topic of, like, complicated matters. On the other hand, these bugs reared in carbohydrate-poor environments showed an ability to store ingested carbohydrates as fat more efficiently. Basically what we humans do if we have an ample supply of carbs but aren't active enough to burn them all off before the fattening begins. Interestingly enough, after enough generations, the moths would actually lay their eggs on lower starch plants or lower carb plants so that their offspring wouldn't become fat from the carb-rich environment. For reference, all the moths raised in the high-carb environment didn't care where their eggs were laid. That was just the norm. We are sort of similar to insects this way. Our carb-rich environment that we created with high-fructose corn syrup in literally everything, and fruits and grains being available year-round now, well, it's eventually going to bite us in the butt. In fact, it has already, when the food pyramid came out, and basically, well, it did this. Lovely. However, I feel like if we have dozens of generations of carb-fed babies, who knows how fast we could evolve to be able to eat carbs without these repercussions. Probably never, though, as survival of the fittest doesn't really apply to us anymore, and those of us most capable of raising the best kids are the ones having the fewest of them. We live in a society But now you know, yes, insects can get fat. And when it comes to the ones with exoskeletons, well, they don't really seem fat because of, the exoskeleton. So instead of the fat going out and making them obviously obese, like in mammals, for instance, their fat instead goes in and crushes their tiny little organs until they die! So again, not too much different from humans. But different sorts of insects showing fat in different ways is also similar to how humans all show fat in different ways too. Some of them, it all goes to the thighs, some it all goes to the gut, and sometimes, in some cases, being skinny fat is just as, if not worse, than being more obviously overweight. You could be a size medium and be very unhealthily fat. It's the fat on the inside that counts, not just the fat on the outside. Though, that doesn't help either, obviously. But this is how people who look seemingly healthy are still able to develop type 2 diabetes, even if they just have a mild case of dad bod, because it's the quality of the fat on their insides that impacts that more so than the amount of fat on the outside. But you didn't click this video for people plump. You're here for the insects. But I already answered that question, so I guess we're done here. Keep learning.